from the WQAQ studio at Quinnipiac, it's Sports Talk with Tall and Small.
And welcome to Sports Talk with Tall and Small. I'm Jordan Siegler with Arthur Lane. We are Tall and Small, and today we are joined by even smaller, standing at 5'4" from New Jersey. Please welcome our hockey expert, Brian Verbel.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a real pleasure to be on Sports Talk with Tall and Small, WQAQ's premier sports radio show.
All right, well, being that our hockey expert is with us today, we are going to start off with the NHL playoffs, which started last night with a few games. So we're going to get right into it. I want your guys' pick for the Hart Trophy.
Okay, the Hart Trophy, as we all know, goes to the league's most valuable player during the regular season. First, I'm going to tell you guys who I think should win it, and second, I'm going to tell you who will win it. Who I think should win it is Jonathan Quick, the goaltender from the Los Angeles Kings. He's got a save percentage of .929, goals against of 1.95, and he piled up 35 wins, 21 losses, and 13 overtime losses. Now, these are numbers pretty much unrivaled by anybody in the league except for Henrik Lundqvist. But Henrik Lundqvist plays behind one of the best shot-blocking teams in the NHL and one of the defensive teams in the NHL. Also, Los Angeles Kings scored an average goals per game of 2.29, which is the second lowest in the league behind Minnesota. Minnesota, after they lost Pierre-Marc Bouchard on January 4th, went 14-23-5. At the time of the injury of Pierre-Marc Bouchard, he and the Minnesota Wild were first place in the NHL. Where are they now? They're hitting the links, guys. You know why they're hitting the links? Because they lost one of their star centers. Now, I'm going to go with Jonathan Quick. Their best two defensemen, who were Drew Doughty and Rob Scuderi for the Los Angeles Kings, had career-worst seasons. They were just absolutely brutal for their contracts. The rest of their defensemen are 4 through 6 guys. So the fact that they could make the playoffs with the second lowest goals per game is why he should win the Hart Trophy. Who will win it? Evgeny Malkin from the Pittsburgh Penguins. The award's picked by the Professional Hockey Writers Association. What's Pittsburgh? One of the most popular franchises in the league. So they're going to get a lot of press. And also, the highest scoring forward in the league who wins the Art Ross Trophy has won the last 8 Hart Trophies. Pretty strong evidence for him to win the trophy. Jordan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, my pick was going to be Evgeny Malkin. You know, he led the league in 190 points, and basically, carried that Pittsburgh Penguins team most of the season without Sidney Crosby in the lineup as well. Really stood out, I think, from the rest.
Also, Miss Chris Letang, their highest scoring defenseman, was out for a while, broken nose, concussion.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely agree with Malkin. Like you said, the past couple guys have been that have won the Hart Trophy have had have been the leader in points. So I think this year it'll be no different. Malkin had an outstanding year to really help bring this Pittsburgh team to where it needed to be without the star player.
Yeah, I mean, I think another guy that you could possibly look at that's going to get a few votes, Tampa Bay Lightning forward Steven Stamkos, 60 goals. But his team didn't make the playoffs, and I think that's really going to be the big argument against him. That's my personal big argument against him is that.
Oh, yeah, for sure, definitely. Stamkos, though, had a great season. One of 2 guys to score 60 goals since the modern era came around after the lockout. Of course, you got Alex Ovechkin, and you got Steven Stamkos. Both seasons, fantastic. Stamkos was a little better because goal scoring was down this year compared to Ovechkin when goal scoring was going up after the lockout. But he's also only one of 2 players to score 60 goals and have his team not make the playoffs. And the other one was Lanny McDonald in 1984. So, I mean, can't really say much about that. It's kind of bad.
All right, we're going to move on to the other major award in the NHL, the Vezina Trophy, which is given to the top goaltender in the league. All right, I'm going to say my pick first. I'm going to go with Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers. Really the reason why the Rangers are where they are. I mean, their offense was good, but it wasn't great, and Henrik Lundqvist carried that team to be the top seed in the Eastern Conference.
The only problem you're going to get, and, trust me, as a diehard Rangers fan, love Henrik Lundqvist, no doubt about it. But the votes that are going to go against Henrik Lundqvist and why I think Jonathan Quick is going to win is because Henrik Lundqvist, the Rangers led the league in shot blocking. They blocked 150 more shots than any other team in the league, which is going to discount Lundqvist's game in a great way. Not that it should, but it will.
Yeah, I'm going with Jonathan Quick as well. He really, like you were saying earlier, Brian, the defenders did not have good years for the Kings. And he really held the defense together this year. He has the glue to really stick it together, the entire team, which is why we were talking a little bit more about him earlier. So I'm definitely going to go with Quick. The Kings, their defense was great. Just basically only Jonathan Quick made them have that great defense. So I think I'm going to go with Quick.
Yeah, there are just a few other goalies that could get some votes but aren't going to win the trophy. You're going to look at Pekka Rinne. Pekka Rinne led the NHL in wins for goaltenders. He had a great season backstopping one of the Predators' best seasons in recent history. You're also going to get Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak, who by far were the best goaltender tandem in the NHL. The problem is, Brian Elliott set the modern-day record for goals against average and save percentage, but he only played 38 games. So when you compare that to a guy like Jonathan Quick, who played 70 games, you really can't give him that much credit.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not the biggest hockey guy, so I kind of look at this the same way I'd look at baseball or something like that. With the, if the goalie plays half the time, it's kind of like a DH. You don't see a DH winning too much just because they don't play that other half of defense.
Absolutely.
So that's my little. I don't know. I have to relate it to something I know a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely think that Quick and Lundqvist are probably the two most deserving in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see how the votes get divided among them and who ends up winning the trophy.
I definitely think it's going to be the closest race at any of the awards.
All right, now we're going to move on to actually talking about the playoffs. I want to know I want to know, who is your playoff sleeper? What team do you think is going to surprise people and make a run for the cup?
Okay, I'm going to give you two definitely sleepers in the West and one in the East. My two West, one is, as I've been talking about the Kings a lot, is the Kings are going to surprise people coming in as that 8th seed. They're coming in, they're playing Vancouver. We all know what Vancouver did last year in the playoffs. They were a great playoff team up until the Stanley Cup final. Now, a lot of people say Vancouver isn't a good playoff team. The Sedin sisters aren't good enough to win a cup. But, I'm going to say I think the Canucks are good, but I think the Kings are going to beat them for one reason. Look at the Kings' numbers. They're the only playoff team to score on. Means their defense is incredible. And as we all know, playoff hockey, you get fast, you get a lot of hits, but you don't get a lot of scoring generally. Mm-hmm. So the Kings system definitely fits into the playoffs. And then you also have the Phoenix Coyotes. Everybody's going to be like, they're a 3 seed, so how can they be a sleeper? We got to remember, they're a 3 seed, but their point total will put them in 7th place in the conference, so I would qualify them as a sleeper, and they got the best matchup they could want. They're playing the Blackhawks. Blackhawks, Jonathan Toews has a concussion, isn't playing. Blackhawks' best player. And the Coyotes have also beaten the Blackhawks in the season series 3-1, which I think is a big edge to the Coyotes. And then in the East, the New Jersey Devils. As a Rangers fan, it kills me to say it, but the Devils are in a good position. They're playing the Florida Panthers, who arguably are the weakest playoff team next to the Ottawa Senators. And they finished the season strong with a 10-4 record in the past 14 games, and Ilya Kovalchuk turned it on in the last end of the season and showed he's worth his big contract.
I'm going to go with the Capitals here. They finished the season playing quite well. They have the matchup against the Bruins. The Bruins could not have much worse of an end to the season. A lot of fans disappointed up in Boston. So I think the Capitals are in prime position. Ovechkin had 12 goals in the last 10 games. He's looking like he's coming back after a somewhat down of a year for someone of his caliber. So I think that the Capitals have a chance to beat the Bruins and maybe make some more noise after.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with a team that Brian mentioned, the Los Angeles Kings, mainly because of Jonathan Quick, who we just finished talking about. We saw last year, even though Boston did have a lot of offensive firepower, but Tim Thomas really dominated the playoffs last year. So we really see how a goalie can take over in the playoffs, and I think that Jonathan Quick is a guy that can do that and can help them make a run.
Yeah, and they're already up 1-0 on Vancouver, so looking good for that pick.
For sure.
All right, now I want to move on to the matchup in the first round. Which one do you expect to be an upset?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I said about playoff sleeper teams. The biggest upset, I think the Kings are going to beat Vancouver, which a lot of people consider a major upset. But I think the bigger upset is the Coyotes beating the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks, we know they won a Stanley Cup very recently. They've maintained their core of star players, and they're viewed upon as one of the elite Western Conference teams. Then you take the Phoenix Coyotes. They had to be bought by the league because they were bankrupt. Nobody expected them to be anywhere near the division lead before the season, And look where they are. They're the third seed in the playoffs. And they also got a great matchup, as I said before, won the season series. Jonathan Taze is injured. I think that's going to be a good matchup, and I'm going to pick the Coyotes in 6.
So, well, I'm going to stick with my sleeper team, and I'm going to say the big upset is going to be the LA Kings beating the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks had the best regular season record in the NHL, and I think the Kings are an 8 seed, and I think the Kings, behind the strong goaltending of Jonathan Quick, are going to upset them. And again, they're already up 1-0, and I think they're well on their way. I could see them doing it in 6 or 7 games.
I agree completely.
You guys are talking so much about Jonathan Quick. I'm going to jump on the Quick bandwagon as well and pick that the big upset is the Kings over the Canucks. You guys have been talking so much. You guys convinced me, so I'm on board too.
I like it.
All right, now we're talking about teams upsetting. What player now is going to be the key to his team? Who is going to have to step up the most for his team to be able to make a run in the playoffs?
Oh, my God. Guess who we're going back to, guys. This is going to be a real shocker, guys. You might want to sit down at home. I don't want to hurt you. We're going back to the Los Angeles Kings. We're going to go back to Mike Richards. Now, Mike Richards, as everybody knows, was traded from the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers institute a dry island policy with their team, which basically means they're not allowed to consume alcohol. Some of the younger players on the team, such as Mike Richards and Jeff Carter, had problems with the team and had problems with that policy, or is rumored that they were locker room problems. They got traded from, both of them ended up getting traded from the Flyers, and Mike Richards honestly has been terrible since he's been traded, and even the last year before with the Flyers. 2 years ago with the Flyers, he would 30 goals, 50 assists, 80 points, great two-way player. Last year, 31, 31, 62, solid numbers. This year, he dropped to 18 goals and 44 points. Really disappointing numbers for a guy with a $7.5 million contract, in my opinion. But last night in the playoffs, he showed why he's worth this contract. He had a goal and 2 assists in the win against the Vancouver Canucks, and not only that, he had 4 big bruising hits, which fit perfectly in playoff hockey.
See, I'm going to go now. You mentioned that we've been talking a lot about Jonathan Quick. I'm going to actually go to the other goaltender we mentioned in the Vezina Trophy and say Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers. I know that the Rangers are number 1 seed, but the Rangers have struggled in the past few years in the postseason. Their offense can be anemic at times, and that really puts a lot on Henrik Lundqvist to come through. He also hasn't been a strong playoff performer throughout his career with a record of 15-20. He's got a 2.60 goals average, goals against average, and a save percentage of 90.9. So I think that he's going to have to step up for the Rangers to be able to make a run in the playoffs. Again, I mentioned earlier that we see goalies really can dominate in the playoffs and take their team to a Stanley Cup, and I think Henrik Lundqvist is going to have to do just that in order for the Rangers to make a run at the Cup.
Oh, I agree completely. And you got to remember, the Rangers are a 1 seed, but all the preseason analysts had the Rangers 9th, 11th. So while they are a 1 seed, everybody views them as overachievers. And as we all know in the playoffs, you get a hot goalie, you can go anywhere.
Yeah, which brings me to my next point. When you're saying overachievers, I'm going to talk about an underachiever, which it was the Washington Capitals. They underachieved all year, and they've started to show that they're going to turn around. So I'm going to look at Alexander Ovechkin, that he's going to really need to step up. I know it's kind of weird to say Ovechkin needs to step up because, he's been playing, he's one of the best players in the game, obviously. But, he didn't have that great of a season. He's been stepping up the past 10 games that I said, 12 goals. But I think he needs to carry that. The Capitals should not be where they are right now. They should have had a better regular season, should have had a better seed. I think he needs to start proving to people that, this team's actually a team that's a contender every year instead of just, 1 year they're not, the next year they are. So I think Ovechkin needs to really step up and bring a series victory to Washington over the Bruins.
I agree 100%. Going back to the preseason polls again, who they have in first place in the East? The Washington Capitals. Where are the Washington Capitals? 7th in the East. But I really think they could show the Bruins something and break the city of Boston's heart. I really think they can.
All right, now to the other side of the spectrum, which player who had a good regular season do you expect to fail his team and not perform well?
I'm going to go with a pick, Erik Karlsson from the Ottawa Senators. He's a defenseman. He had 78 points this year, which is a great number for a defenseman. Since 2000, only 3 defensemen have scored above 70 points. The other 2 defensemen, Mike Green and Nicholas Lindstrom. Pretty good company to be in my opinion. The problem is he only has 6 games playoff experience, and in those 6 games, he had a point every game, but he was -4. So he's not really helping on the defensive end of the playoffs, and defense is a vital part in playoff hockey.